Welcome back to YouTube. Tell your friends and neighbors if they want to hear about me and the issues, they've got to go to YouTube and click on Jim Traficant channel. And bingo, I'm going to inform you for sure. First issue I want to talk about is my pet subject, issue I worked with long and hard in Congress, taxes and the Internal Revenue Service. You know, prior to 1998, and many people don't realize this, a taxpayer that went to court with the Internal Revenue Service was considered guilty before they stepped into the courtroom and had to prove themselves innocent. I know that sounds crazy, but if you didn't know that, that's part of the problem. The American people don't even know the problems. I immediately started to challenge that by changing the burden of proof in a civil tax case, switching it from the taxpayer to the Internal Revenue Service. As long as the taxpayer was compliant and just didn't tell them to go to hell, if the IRS was not satisfied with their investigative review and audits and decided to litigate, the burden of proof would be on the Internal Revenue Service. Folks, I became a bitter enemy of Dan Rostenkowski, the powerful chairman of the Ways and Means Committee of Congress from Chicago. I mean, he and I almost come to blows. Everybody was so afraid of this guy. No one would challenge him, and I got right in his face. I said, you're supposed to be for the people. Who's kidding whom? They wouldn't even hold a hearing. In fact, it got so bad that the Ohio-Pennsylvania delegation of congressmen wanted me to serve on the Ways and Means Committee. That's the most powerful committee to Congress. It deals with taxes and trade and your dollar. Even Mike Ditka, my friend from the University of Pittsburgh, played football together. I called Mike, he's from Chicago. He called Rostenkowski. Listen what Rostenkowski said, and to me, it was a great compliment. He said, I cannot take Traficant on this committee. He said he'd be too strong. I'll never pass another tax increase, and I'll never pass another trade agreement. Another free trade agreement? Never. He will develop controls within our committee. How right he was. You'd have never seen NAFTA and GATT for sure. North American free trade. We give them jobs, billions of dollars. Our companies move down there. You know what we get? We got 2 Ford pickup trucks, half-ton of pinto beans, and 3 baseball players to be named later here. Yeah. Dan Rostenkowski was right. But at some point, the Republicans took over. I think it was in '94. And the Republicans started a reform bill to reform the Internal Revenue Service. And finally, in 1998, it came to the floor. When it came to the floor, it did not contain the Traficant burden of proof change, because the Internal Revenue Service said that they would recommend a veto, and the White House opposed changing the burden of proof. I said on the House floor then, this is a feel-good bill, but it's really not going to do anything for the American people without changing the burden of proof. Naturally, it passed on the House floor. Everybody go home and brag they reformed the Internal Revenue Service. I got a call that night from the new chairman, Republican from Texas, Bill Archer. And he said, Jim, we've been getting bombarded with thousands and thousands of calls and messages. They want your language in this bill. They want the burden of proof changed. And he says, the more I think about it, you're right. And almost the most uncommon thing to ever happen in the history of Washington, he said, I am going to have it inserted when we go to conference with the Senate. So keep in mind now, the House bill is passed, the Senate bill is passed, none of them have the Traficant burden of proof. Now it goes to the conference, and Bill Archer puts it in. Now the conference report comes back to both bodies and is passed and goes to the president, President Clinton. During that time, I'm involved with a debate with the IRS commissioner. And the IRS commissioner says, how can IRS prove a negative? And I said, how can a taxpayer prove a negative? If the Internal Revenue Service is going to court, they must have some grounds to take an American to court. At that point, I did a Robert Novak special. You recall Bob Novak, he passed away, very conservative TV host. He said, Jim, I support you, but I think this veto will probably happen. I'm concerned. He said, it's amazing. I never thought you can get it this far. And I said, they don't call President Clinton Slick Willie for nothing. He could veto the bill and help these IRS workers, or he could sign the bill and help the American people. He's a politician. He's going to sign this bill. President Clinton signed the bill. Let me give you the dynamics of it, because I doubt if you know who was responsible for this. This is a monumental change. They did a snapshot study 12 months before the passage of the bill, 12 months after the passage of the bill. And they analyzed three major categories. The first was wage garnishments, second one was property liens, and the third one was seizures, foreclosures, seizures of family-owned homes. When the taxpayer had to prove their case, 3.1 million Americans had their wages garnished. When the burden of proof switched to the Internal Revenue Service the following year, that figure dropped to 560,000. 2.5 million Americans were removed from wage garnishment because now the Internal Revenue Service had to prove their case. Second category is property liens. If you're a businessman or a family, you get your property liens, you're done financially. Someone sees a lien by the Internal Revenue Service, God almighty. 666,000 property liens when the taxpayer had to prove it. That dropped to 161,000, less than 500,000 less. When the government had the burden of proof, and the final category astounded everybody, even me. Seizure of individual family-owned homes, 10,073. When the taxpayer had the burden of proof. When it switched to the Internal Revenue Service, 57 homes in 50 states. Yeah, I almost came to a fist fight with Dan Rostenkowski. Bitter enemy till the end. In my opinion, he's part of the reason this country's bankrupt. These tax policies have killed us. And I make this statement: if we do not remove, literally abolish the income tax in America and replace it with a final retail sales tax, America will implode just like the Soviet Union did. And they're going to say, here goes Traficant. I want you to listen to me. Don't think that can't happen. All the missiles, all the guns, all the power of those Muscovites fell apart. What do you think is happening in this country with this debt? What do you think is happening? So what do? Repudiate the debt? It's not a bad idea, but get ready to defend the turf with some missiles. Income tax was the issue of Karl Marx, the founder of communism. It's a proven fact, if you tax something, you discourage it, you get less of it. You tax income, people are not rewarded for work. As a result, a lot of people don't want to work. If you're watching this YouTube telecast here, 47% of eligible taxpayers in America pay no income tax. You're paying it for them. Why? How stupid are we? And what state is it going to be and say, We're tired of sending our money to Washington and seeing it go to some other state. We're not going to do it anymore. You don't think it'll happen? Let's look at Alaska, a state with a land mass bigger than any country in the world, perhaps except Russia and China. All that oil up there, they could just decide that we're going to be an independent Alaska. You laugh, think it may not happen. What about that Southwest Compact, who's tired of this immigration business? We're tired. Could there be a compact of states? Yes, and it is that income tax. One of my last bills was right on target. It was coupled with two Republicans. Billy Tozan, Republican from Louisiana, Dan Schaefer, Republican from Colorado. And here's what it did. It abolished the Internal Revenue Service, it repealed the 16th Amendment of the Constitution, and it created a flat retail sales tax that everybody pays. Now, all of my opponents said, look here, Traficant, you want to put a 25% retail sales tax on all new goods and services. So when we go buy that coat for $100, it's now going to be $125. Hear me. Harvard did a study and said when you remove the burdensome compliance cost of that Internal Revenue Code, these companies are going to have so much downward movement, they predict there'll be no increase in prices. None. No more income tax, no more withholding, no more capital gains tax, no more corporation tax. We basically pay it anyway. It chases companies overseas. No more inheritance tax, no more tax on savings, no more tax on investment, no more attorneys, no more courts, no more lawsuits, no more agents, no more filing deadlines, no more tax on Social Security, no more Medicare tax. It's covered. And it is the way to go. By the way, all those drug dealers on the streets, they'll be paying taxes. Those visitors from Japan and Germany, they'll be paying taxes. All those illegal immigrants, they'll be paying taxes. I'll get to immigration. But before I do, I wasn't just a supporter of auditing the Federal Reserve System. I'm for abolishing it. See, I believe in the Constitution. The Congress shall coin the money, as far as money's concerned. As far as trade is concerned, Congress shall regulate commerce with foreign nations and with the respective states and with Indian tribes. Now, you'll be hearing about a casino. I'll be taking that up in one of my next YouTube appearances. But next, I'll be talking about trade. Be worth your while to tune in. So just remember, just click on to YouTube and type in Jim Traficant Channel, and we'll have a little conversation. See you then.